Hello everyone, and welcome back to She Makes It Work. I'm Gabby, and today I have the pleasure of interviewing my very good friend and former client, Jessica. This is part of our Inspiring Women series, where we tell women's stories in ways that we hope can inspire and inform the audience to make amazing career decisions. All of the women that we're interviewing have built incredible careers for themselves, and what we're going to do is hear about their journeys, the decisions they make, the challenges they faced, and the things that make them uniquely them. So let's go ahead and get started. Jessica, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm excited too. I'm so happy to talk to you. You have been such an incredible and meaningful part of my life. I enjoyed working with you so much. And I think that your story, as well as everything you do, is truly inspiring. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes, so I am currently working for a large nonprofit healthcare system. I am the national director over all of our mergers, divestitures, and acquisitions.
Jessica, that's amazing. Tell us a little bit about how you got started in your career, or what got you there? What was your journey like?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Well, I actually started out nowhere close to where I'm at today. I did not dream or even think that I would be doing what I'm doing right now. I actually started out as a church plant pastor. My husband and I did that when I started when I was 19. And we did that for about 12 years. And as we came back to where we currently live today, I got a contract position at a procurement department with the current company that I'm with right now. Started as an executive assistant, then over time I just evolved and grew, and now I'm a director.
That's amazing. So how long have you been there at this company?
I have been there for 10 years.
10 years.
Yes.
I love that because I have found that so many women have what we would consider non-traditional starts to their journey.
Oh yeah.
And I think that's so interesting because when we think about corporate careers or business, we always think people start at a certain place, and I love hearing how people start and the decisions they make along the way, because I think that everybody's got such a beautiful and colorful story, and we wouldn't know, we would never know that because we know you as where you are now, right? Having taken such an amazing path, what would you say you learned about that, or what would you say kind of drove you in this direction?
Honestly, it was out of necessity. I'm a mom and a dual income family. I started looking at a recruiter's company, and I was like, okay, this is my experience. This is what I did. That amazing woman figured out, like, puzzle piece together, I think you could be an executive assistant. And I'm like, what's that? And so I got the position and learned a lot at the time and evolved and grew and learned a lot as an executive assistant. And then over time, I started outgrowing that and eventually became a project lead and a project manager and so on and so forth.
I love what you just said about how you eventually outgrew that. And if you don't mind, can you share with us, how do you know when you've outgrown something?
Well, I don't know if I know all of the answers to that. But in my experience, I start getting an itch to do more than where I'm at right now. Maybe it's time, maybe it's people. I know one of the longest times that I was in a project lead position, I was there for almost 4 years. I was there pretty long because I was a mom and I had to be able to focus on what I was doing at home. We were still, had a ministry as well. My kids started getting older and I started getting bored. I started getting bored at what I was doing, and I also started noticing that I was doing the same functions. I was looking around of people that were higher up in the organization, and I was looking around and I was like, I think I should be that role because I'm actually this role and I've been doing those jobs. I think it's time for me to do something more than what I'm doing now. And that was an intentional growth. And as I grew into self-advocacy, I started learning how to do that a little bit more intentionally. That was more accidental.
I love that because it's also about recognizing your own value and respecting that and honoring that and taking that next step so that is being recognized more broadly. I love what you said about kind of getting that itch to do more and also getting bored. Part of the reason I honed in on this is because I know there have been so many times in my career where I stayed too long at something that maybe I'd outgrown. And so knowing what those signals are and knowing how important it is to honor your own value and recognize it, I think that's huge. I love that.
A light bulb went on one day, and it was no magical moment. It was just like maybe the time and place of where I was in my life, that we were on this all hands call. And one of the leaders came on and was addressing all of us and made a statement and said, the only one that's responsible for your growth is you. Nobody is going to own your growth other than you. And it was like just this permission of, own it, girl. Own that.
Own it. I love that, because I think that sometimes people wait for a tap on the shoulder or for someone to nudge them or move them, but your career is your own. It's your own journey. You do own it. You are responsible for it.
Yeah, and I've also noticed that sometimes it depends upon your leader and their appetite of being able to develop you.
Yes.
But I have noticed that if I come organized with a well-thought plan and questions to ask my leader, to prod them how I can grow or how I can develop, it helps them help me if I'm prepared coming into those discussions, as well as the leaders around me as well.
Yeah, I want to highlight that preparation is key, being prepared for this conversation and doing that work. And you always do the work. That's one of the things I admire about you. You do. You always do the work, Jessica. You know that.
Probably more than I should at times. Let's say that.
I wasn't going to say that. I also like how you talked about the influence of the people around you and how that can inspire you or help keep you stagnant. Because we hear all the time, right? We really do hear all the time that you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, and being really intentional about who you surround yourself with so that they can help inspire and lift you up, and that you're doing that for them as well. You know what I mean? That is really important, because I have seen people stagnate sometimes, and they're just in a group where nobody's trying to move forward, and they kind of wonder why they don't.
And what I've noticed, it doesn't necessarily mean, okay, so I'll just use the example of me being a director right now. It doesn't mean that I have to surround myself with senior directors or VPs or whatever. It's, do I have people in my life that see the absolute best in me and are drawing that out of me and are calling that out in me, even though maybe I feel like I'm a certain way or I think I'm a certain way. Wow, I'm getting a little emotional. But no matter where they're at in life, it could be your grandma or it could be your child or maybe just a friend. It doesn't have to be just senior leaders that are above you in a hierarchy.
Yeah, it's your peer group, it's your family, it's everything. But it also reminds me that the best leaders inspire people, but some of that inspiration, and leader I'm using informally, not structurally, right? It does not have to be a title-based thing, but people can be leaders in your lives. But some of that best inspiration comes from people seeing the best in you, and then you want to live up to that version that they see.
Right.
You want to live up to the best qualities that they see in you. That's also inspiring. Right?
Yes.
So Jessica, one of the things that I've always admired about you, and I noticed from the day I met you, literally our very first meeting together, is your passion. And so can you tell me, you're laughing, maybe it's something we have in common, but talk to me about what you're passionate about as a leader.
I'm laughing because sometimes I call it passion, sometimes I call it intensity, and so I try to lead with explaining myself before going into a conversation of what they're about to expect sometimes.
It's not both, right?
So I would say, but in specific to leadership, what I'm most passionate about is, are we accomplishing the goal? And are we on track to accomplish the goal? But I feel like there's more to it than that of what makes me passionate. On the other side of it and through it, are you growing through it and I growing through it? And are we growing together through it? Because these are situations that we can, like, that's what leadership is helping others grow into maybe it's a goal or an outcome, but also us as people.
And that's something I struggle with, because personally I am a results-oriented leader and I tend to get really caught up in the results and in the outcome. But you do manage to balance the passion for having a good outcome with the passion for developing people along the way. And that's tough. So I really respect that.
Well, you do it better than what you give yourself credit for.
Thank you.
That's That's how we became friends.
That is how we became
doing
friends.
it together.
It is doing it together. I would say maybe you're more consistent about it than I am.
Okay. Well, that's
I'll give
fair.
you that.
That's
Yeah?
fair.
Okay.
Yes. You know, I've seen the snapshots of things that you've spoken about with Brene Brown, and the ability to, in the midst of high intensity, fast pace, heavy lifting deliverables that maybe we're, tackling, but how do we build strong relationships and vulnerability in those workplaces? And I think there are pockets where we can leverage confrontation or conflict. Maybe it's internal conflict or external conflict, where we can pause and take advantage of those moments to be vulnerable with each other, because that's whenever we can, that's where we can grow together the most as individuals, but also as a team.
And that kind of vulnerability takes some real courage. So I'd love to know, where for you does that courage come from? The courage to confront that conflict and to do it in such a vulnerable way.
It's actually come from learning that vulnerability is good. Different books that I've read, like 5 Dysfunctions of a Team or Brene Brown, and hey, this is actually good, taking advantage of these critical moments where we can have conflict and push through that. I feel like vulnerability is a tool that I can share of myself that hopefully will make others feel comfortable that they can be human. COVID was a great example where we're really in a tragic situation, and there were many moments where we had to pause and just be vulnerable, with we meaning the team that I was working with, and be vulnerable about how we're feeling in the moment, so that we can just call it, let each other share, support one another, take a little break, kick off the dust from our feet, and let's move on and keep kicking butt.
It's a good point, because the changes that COVID brought to the workplace definitely required us to navigate a lot of new things in order to survive it, frankly. And I think vulnerability is one of those things. And I love that you tied vulnerability to relationship building, because honestly, trust requires vulnerability. And if you think about building the deepest, most trusted relationships, it's because you get to know that person on a deep level, which requires them and you to be vulnerable. And one of the things that I did love learning from Brene Brown is that vulnerability is one of the truest forms of courage. And it's so interesting, because when we're young, I feel like we're taught that vulnerability is a weakness, and we think that when we move into the corporate world, we have to always be so formal, and we can't ever truly be ourselves, as much as we talk about authenticity. And then you learn that true vulnerability is strength.
Yes, absolutely. The reality is we all know that we're human beings, and at some point people are going to catch on.
And when you're doing really intense work, it does require a certain level of trust. And again,
Absolutely.
Our dynamic was that you were my client, but part of the way we worked, so we had such amazing results, is because we had such deep trust, and that deep trust came from connection and vulnerability, and also doing just amazing kick-ass work together. We got amazing results.
We did.
We weren't just sitting around being vulnerable all the time.
No, we kicked some big butt.
We definitely did. Yeah. And I hope that for our audience, that our audience has an opportunity to work with people who bring these qualities and help inspire to be better. And I think that comes with a lot of experience and maturity and self-awareness. But that is one of the things that I loved best about my consulting career, is finding these really unique client relationships and building something amazing together. And I just genuinely hope for people who love work, who love building, who love creating, who want to leave their mark on the world, I hope everybody can find these kinds of partnerships and enjoy them while they're there. Enjoy them for what they are while they have them.
Your entire how you came in was, how can I make you successful? And I don't think I was used to that at first. And I didn't think that you were being authentic.
Oh, really?
But because I'd never encountered it before. Is this for real?
Yeah,
and then like, wow, she really is the real deal.
Yeah, thanks.
She's the real deal, and she really does care.
Yeah, I do. That's one of the things I love best about client service is building my clients up. And I know it sounds cheesy to say helping my clients' dreams come true, but that is literally what drives me. That is my purpose. That is my mission. I help my clients get what they've always wanted, no matter what that is. You know what I mean? And that's so powerful and so meaningful. And I want to leave them better than I found them. That's always been my dream and my goal. So one of the things that I love to explore is that even though we have these amazing careers and awesome successes, it's not always easy. It's not always roses and sunshine and popping champagne bottles. We have tough moments and we have tough situations, and sometimes they last longer than we'd like and sometimes they're harder than we'd like. So what was one of the toughest moments in your career, if you don't mind sharing that?
Sure.
And how did you overcome it?
I think one that comes to my mind, that moment where I was realizing that I needed to start self-advocating for myself. That was hard because I had this thought in my mind that my manager or my leader or someone around me is going to notice me and they're going to say, you have done such a good job. We're going to give you this promotion, or we're going to give you more money. 6 years went by, Gabby, and that never happened, or however long it was. And I think it took a lot of courage and reading. I mean, it took a minute to really process and prepare my heart and mind of what it was going to take to have the courage to step up and say, I deserve more than what I'm doing right now, and I want more. And it feels like you're prideful or you're haughty or, oh, who do you think you are? You're Miss, big stuff. And that's not the case at all. Obviously, it's our approach on how we do that. We have to be able to justify, these are the deliverables and this is the value that I bring and these are my qualities that I bring and this is the results that I've brought. Then there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to do that. Back to that same reason is, nobody's going to own your growth other than you.
Right.
And that was really hard. And I don't know if it ever is easy, but it has been getting a little bit easier as I've learned pockets of in moments of time where we have to embrace the moment of this is it, this is the time.
And I think that even when you tell it that way, you're like, yes, of course, self-advocate. But what makes it really hard and what makes it hard to have a conversation about to correct it is that feeling of I'm not being valued and recognized appropriately for my contributions, and it's gone on too long. Because that brings about a lot of feelings. We're human, and we have a lot of feelings about that. So then having the conversation, and I love what you're saying about preparing the information, kind of preparing your case and bringing in facts, because that in some ways gets you out of that emotional aspect of something that is very emotional. It can be very hurtful.
And don't do it emotional.
Yeah, you can't approach it emotionally. But I just want to share that it is emotional at the time.
Yes.
I've been there too, where I felt like I wasn't being valued and factually was not. But I'm just saying that, you have all these feelings about it, but you have to move past the feelings to take action, and you have to take action in a way where you don't bring the emotion into it. Because unfortunately, in those situations, especially as women, if we approach it with emotion, our voice isn't heard.
That's right. Having the facts to back up what we're doing and why, at that point, it's only logic. And then if that doesn't happen, then that's more decisions that we have to take if that's not going to happen.
Because if there's promotion criteria and if there's metrics and there's documented results, if you bring that forward and it still isn't respected, obviously that's not the situation you're in now, but for someone else, if that doesn't work, then that might be that signal that that's not the right place for you.
I mean, I feel like my leaders have done a fantastic job being aware, but it's also been because I have been communicating about what I want as well. And so I feel like it's something that sometimes we have to do together.
I think so too. And I love that you said being open about communicating what you want. Because again, I think that there's this impression that to get promoted, you work hard and there's a tap on the shoulder. But there's a moment where you need to say, this is something I'm interested in, so that they can see you differently. They may not know that, right?
Right.
And I just think that for our audience, I'm really trying to emphasize that part of it is that statement of interest, of professing an interest in growth and then co-creating opportunities for growth.
Absolutely. I mean, our leaders, especially in the type of environments that we've worked, leaders are busy.
Really? But I'm sitting around all day thinking about you.
It's not. One of my mentors have told me, it's not always about you, Jessica.
About you. No.
And I'm, oh, right. Yes, you're very busy, you know.
It is also that signal of, I'm feeling the type of way. I'm feeling a little bit left behind. What can I do about that?
I'm bored or, you know,
But absolutely. What can I do to own that? And that's where you took the ownership. You didn't just get sad and wish somebody would fix it for you.
Yeah, pout and just, you know, not.
Why isn't someone doing this?
Yes, right. Or just not doing my job as well as I was. It's like, okay, well, if nobody cares, then I'm just not going to do it then. Well, that's career suicide to do that. So go home and patch it up. Don't do that.
No. One of the things that's interesting to me, especially having navigated this world for so long and seeing how female leaders navigate this professional world, how have you navigated being a woman in the workplace?
Sure. Well, in technology, women are the minority many times on calls. It's very usual and very common for me to be the only woman on a call.
In this day and age,
it's still it's evolving and growing, but it's a normal everyday life for it to be Jess and the guys. For me personally, it's been inspiring seeing other women in technology be themselves and embrace being a woman and not feeling like they have to be a man to be successful. I think how we bring ourselves into those spaces and we treat ourselves in those spaces is how others are going to treat us. And so I think that is really important, that I don't have to act like a man and I don't have to be a man to be smart and to be effective, and I can still wear lip gloss at the same time and still do a really good job doing what I'm doing.
That's right. That is right.
I can still be a mom. I can still have kids. I can still make sure that my hair looks good on a call and all of those things. I can speak with a feminine voice because that's what I have. I am a woman and I love being a woman because I think that there's things that we bring to a workplace that a man doesn't.
I think so too. And I really like, because I think you touched on something that's been on my mind lately, which is we teach people how to treat us.
Yes.
You know, by how we show up.
Yes.
And I love, because you have done that, and that's not a formal thing. That's not a sitting down, I'm a woman and you'll treat me this way. But
right.
It's how you show up, right? And what you accept and what you emphasize. So I love that you've done that.
Well, it's not been something that I just always knew. It's something that I've had to learn over time. And especially starting out in the church world, there's all kinds of different traditions that come with women in leadership. And that's certainly not to downplay churches as a whole, but I think that there are a lot of concepts, even starting out in church in general, of what women in leadership looks like in the church world. And it's definitely getting better, but I think that was my boot camp of identifying that I am a called leader, and even if it's pastoring a church, that is what I'm called to do, and that's okay that I'm not a man.
Right, exactly. I think that it's really important to note that depending on what industry or even just individual companies you're at, there are these certain informal expectations of how women show up. And what I always encourage people to do is just be yourself, be what's organic for you. And if that doesn't work in that environment, that's okay. Choose a different environment, you know?
It reminds me, there was a call that I had some time ago, and it's very rare that I've had to do this, but I got on a call about a situation, and the gentleman really started talking to me very forcefully. Now, I'm a big girl. I can talk, I can handle direct conversation. That's certainly, and you know that, raised by a military man, I appreciate direct conversation. This was derogatory. This was a derogatory conversation. And I'd only done this one other time, but I said, you know what? I don't think that this is working for me right now. And so I'm going to close the call, and we can revisit this at a different time when we can be respectful with one another, and when you and I both had a chance to think a little bit more about this topic. And so I appreciate you. I am going to hang up the call now.
Great.
And it was a man, and I know this person, and so I know that that's not who he truly is, but it was also a statement that I will not be treated disrespectfully. And so let's figure out how we can do this respectfully together.
That's right. And that's the right message to send. And I love that that's a graceful way to enforce boundaries. And again, that is teaching someone how to treat you in action. And I also want to emphasize that most people, I think, really don't understand the power of walking away from a situation or a conversation, because sometimes it's innateness to try and fix it or to try and keep going. Or as women, sometimes we're taught we're supposed to smooth it over. And smoothing it over isn't the right answer, because then you're teaching them that you will accept this behavior.
That's right. That's
so
right.
Walking away is the right thing to do.
Well,
and it feels really good.
I'm not the type that it feels good. It's very uncomfortable for me to naturally do that. But I will have to say, as I'm growing in my own leadership in response to your, woman in the workplace, that was something that I have grown into, and it doesn't come naturally for me. But it also, there was a couple other people on the call. And so I wasn't just making a statement to the gentleman, but I was also making a statement to the other team members. And one of them was a female. That this is not an acceptable way, and this is not acceptable behavior. But that didn't give me an excuse to return disrespect.
Exactly.
I'm going to maintain respect for the gentleman, because I actually do have great respect for that person. And I think he was just very stressed, and it was a moment. We all have those. I know I've had those.
I have had those.
And so that being said, I think that it is something, though, that you can grow into and that you can evolve, because it doesn't come naturally for me as a person. You know that.
I do. And it's so funny, because I said, as women, we're often taught to smooth things over. But if I can be very vulnerable for a second, we always talk about how your style is fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Mine is fight. And so I think the reason I really did highlight the power of walking away is because my nature is to stand and fight, and that's not the right answer in that situation.
Right.
Yeah. And that you're just getting down in the mud, rolling around with them when that happens. And I had to learn not to do that, and learning that walking away is sometimes the right answer. But I love this story, and especially that you emphasize there are other people in the room, because as leaders, we are modeling behavior for other people. We are teaching other people how to handle these situations with our actions.
Right.
And you're showing, I'm going to stand up for myself, and I'm going to do it in a professional and respectful way, but I will not accept this. And that's amazing for everybody on the call, for the women and for the men. So the men know this isn't acceptable too. So do you feel like being a woman in leadership is a different experience from a man's experience? And how?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we're different. Men and women are different, and we're supposed to be different. At one point, early on, long time ago, I had moments where I wished I was a man, because I was like, this would be so much easier if I was just a man. It would be so much easier for me to be able to, operate in levels of leadership, or to say the things that I would like to say if I was a man. And it was a misconception that that's not true. I could still do that as a woman, but I'm just going to do it differently as a woman, because I am a woman. I'm not going to carry myself like a man or talk like a man. I'm going to be myself. And I'm a mom. I'm a wife. There's different parts of me that a man is not. A man is not a mom. a man is not a wife. And there are unique characteristics of being a woman that is different than a man. And I think that just like anything else, gender is one of them, but we're all unique in our own way. And I think embracing individuality and including gender as a part of that is, I think, can be really powerful if we embrace strengths that we have in each other. But I also think that it's important that we don't generalize men and women. I think that many times, not all the time, but many times we can accidentally generalize a man or generalize a woman. That's not true.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think, when we think about the experiences we have being who we are and the genders we are, sometimes I think that there are certain expectations and that people accept things differently from a man than they do from a woman.
Yeah.
And I think one of those things is authoritative guidance or even hard feedback. I think that's heard differently from a woman than from a man.
Absolutely. I think there's also this expectation, but sometimes it could be more natural for women to want to nurture certain things, or an expectation that a woman would serve in a role that's more nurturing, vice versa, depending upon what that woman's expectation is, because, I think this is what I'm expected to do because I'm the woman, rather than what they actually can bring to the table and the skill set that they can bring. I think that that is something that I've had to grow and accept in reading the room for myself personally, because many times I've been in rooms where I'm not seen as the woman that can help facilitate a strategy conversation or facilitate, action planning, but rather, what are we having for lunch today? Right. And unfortunately, I've had to read the room of whether or not I would be received or not. But in other rooms, if I'm received, then I step in and I am myself. But I think, unfortunately, there are some rooms that still don't welcome that. How can we redirect your expectations of who I am and what I actually bring to the table?
Right, what my role is.
Yes.
Even, because sometimes it's not aligned with your role.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Sometimes that is a reminder that is not where we are. And
that's right.
That's someone else's role.
That's not who we are.
Yeah. We're talking about softness and we've talked a lot about vulnerability, but what I really want to make sure that we're clear with to our audience is that you show up very strongly. And I show up very strongly. Yeah. And you and I have this deep connection, and so we can talk about vulnerability and the fact that we have soft moments. But what I've noticed in the workplace with multiple client companies and my own companies is that sometimes there's an expectation that female leaders are more nurturing, for example, or they might deliver a message more softly. But you and I would deliver that message more directly. We're both much more direct people.
Very direct.
And we show up very strongly. And so what I think I really want to emphasize is that can be off-putting to other people because we are emotionally intelligent women, but that doesn't mean that we're going to follow this path where we're going to act like your mommy at work. We're not your mom, we're your leaders.
Yeah. I'm not going to be timid. Yeah. And I am going to be very direct with what my thoughts are, but I will be respectful, to say the least. We definitely show up strong, direct, and sometimes that doesn't meet the expectations.
Sometimes it just doesn't land well.
It doesn't land well. Well said.
Yeah. But that's what I want to emphasize, is that as more and more women are coming up in leadership and more generations of women are becoming more prominent leaders in the workforce, that is opening up this dialogue, or it's at least opening up more diverse ways of showing up as women, because we are women, we are people, we are individuals, and we get to show up as who we are and not as who other people expect us to be.
That's right.
And I love that that's the world we're in right now. I'm seeing it changing.
Yeah, I am too. I am too, in a lot of different ways.
It is. And I just want to be really blunt here, because we're tiptoeing around something that I don't know is going to be clear to everybody. So I'm just going to be really blunt and tell this story really quickly, which is that I went to college in the 90s and entered the workforce in the late 90s and early 2000s. And I grew up in California. I was a huge feminist. There was this huge awareness about female equality. And I thought that the workplace was more progressive about that than was the fact. And so when I entered the corporate workplace, I almost had a form of shock that this behavior existed, because I was told that it didn't.
Gotcha.
And so what I don't want is for people of different age groups to think, well, I'm experiencing this, it's just me because this doesn't happen in the workplace anymore. Yes, it does. Like, it is still part of our work culture that things are just different.
Yeah.
And you have to know how to navigate that. That's always my message is, you're in it. What are you going to do?
That's right.
You know? But I don't want people to think, oh, feminism is solved. Women are 100% equal at work and everybody's treated the same. People are not treated the same. So I'd love to know if you've had a significant moment where another woman has been a really strong ally or supporter.
Well, you've been one of them.
Oh, thank you.
That's for sure. Having you come in and be such a supporter to me caught me off guard. I wasn't accustomed to that. Not that it never happened to me. I was just, it's an energy that I really wish that there was more of. How about we put it that way? I wish that there was more of, and I think that's the purpose of what you do.
Oh, thank you.
And so how can we multiply more Gabbies? I think that you really understood who I was and came in and tried to fill the blind spots and fill the gaps of things that I couldn't do. And I really appreciated that. And it wasn't just from a work perspective, but it was who I was as a leader and helping me become a better leader in what I was trying to accomplish in my job. You were honest but compassionate in your responses to me. And that's why I appreciate you.
Oh, thank you for saying that. Thank you. Thank you. What I want to share, and I know you do this too, is that as women and as leaders, we have to be intentional about how we show up for other women. The more you do it intentionally, the more it becomes organic. But I think that it's so important to recognize I'm in a position where I can really help another woman. I'm going to do that.
Right.
And just really take that opportunity to be that for someone.
Yeah.
It's amazing to be able to impact each other's lives that way. And I think that a lot of times as people are growing in their careers, they don't necessarily see themselves as, I'm the one who can do that for somebody.
Right.
I'm in a place where I can lift somebody up. But one of the things I do love about you is that is part of your message, is that you do love to lift people up.
I do.
And you find the moments where you can do that. But one of the ways we as women can help each other and lift each other up in the workplace is to find those opportunities, to search out those opportunities.
I think there's other moments too where it's not only a situation like that, but also ways that I absolutely love is helping other women build their resumes and say, hey, you can do this, and working with them on interviews and interviewing for a job that they didn't think that they would ever be able to do. I mean, I have several friends of mine that are now working six-figure jobs. 10 years ago, they were nowhere close to a six-figure job, but it was because of some time and investment, and they're rocking it, they're killing it, and that is an awesome thing to be able to like see in somebody. But I think there's also been folks like you and others. There's been a female leader in my organization that's also spoken positive things and what they've seen and given me opportunity as well. And I'm just incredibly grateful for that. There's so much value in just knowing that someone's willing to invest in you.
And it's great. Like, I do have to say, it's great when you're a leader and you can promote another woman, or you can help another woman get promoted. Like, oh, that's so nice. But it's not just that. It's also all of these things, all of these ways we support each other.
Yes. It's just an awareness that we can bring into the table. And maybe that's one of my favorite things, is being in a position where I can promote a woman.
One of those moments as a leader where you feel like I've made it is when I was building out my team, my internal team, and I had an opportunity to hire women. And, one of the things that you always want to be careful of is that you're always hiring the most qualified person. Like, anything you do should be who's the right fit for this job or who's the most ready for a promotion. But to be able to take women who are passionate about something and give them a jump in their career, or give them an opportunity, and to be able to build a team. And I remember at one point, talent acquisition was like, they're hiring slightly more women than men. And I'm like, great, maybe at some point that means we'll be 50-50 in leadership roles.
That's right.
We're not.
That's right. That's right.
I'm balancing the scales a
yes,
little bit.
you are. Yes.
And they were all very qualified, and they were the most qualified candidates. I do have to say that in some spaces you do end up with more women than men. Project management is a space where there's a lot of really successful, powerful women, for example.
Yeah,
you know?
Absolutely. I'm a project manager.
That's right. At heart.
PMP.
Yep. PMP. So Jessica, as amazing and as strong as you are, I'm sure that you have had moments of self-doubt in your career.
Oh, yes.
So I get asked this question a lot, is how do you overcome self-doubt?
Yes, I have definitely had self-doubt. I think coming from a completely different industry altogether to technology, and going from an executive assistant and, evolving into a completely different space, there's been a ton of self-doubt. And am I smart enough? Maybe I know how to lead people, but I don't know anything about this organization or anything about technology to begin with. And so what we don't confront, we can't conquer. If I'm feeling doubtful or insecure about something, okay, I think I'm gonna have to call this out. I'm afraid. I'm doubting that I'm capable of this. And why? Why do I feel like I can't do this? What is it that I think that I don't have that is making me think that I can't? And in many times, I don't have certain things. But it doesn't mean that there's not other tools in the toolkit that I can use to reach across the table and then build a collaboration with somebody else and ask for help, or maybe there's some gaps that I know I have, but that's part of teamwork. I mean, especially in technology, like nobody's gonna be able to know everything, nobody's gonna know how to do everything. Nobody is a real expert in every single thing. It just doesn't exist, especially in, clinical technology spaces. And so I think just accepting also that we're not gonna know everything about everything, but who do I know that does, that I can build a network around me until I do maybe get stronger in certain areas that really should be a part of my foundation.
I think that's a really good point about leaning on your support network, right? Leaning on your support structure. And so I think there's a certain amount of self-awareness that's required to be able to say, I have self-doubt. Am I missing a skill or piece of information, and how can I fill that gap? That's really constructive. That's a really actionable way to approach that.
And I'm sure you've seen this too. There are some people that they have self-doubt and then they just give up and they don't try.
Yes.
Well, that's not really taking ownership or responsibility. I think there is some positive things that can come out of self-doubt that's revealing that maybe we really do lack certain things.
That's right. It could be a learning opportunity.
It could be a learning opportunity, but it's not a place where we just go and we just give up and say, oh, I can't do it. It's just, what do I do with that gap? Now, maybe it's not a gap. It would be like me saying, I just don't talk well to people. And I would come to you and I say, oh, I don't know. I don't know if I can talk to people. You'll look at me like, are you on drugs?
Right. I'm looking at you like that right now.
Right. But if it's more like, I'm really nervous about being a cybersecurity, person, and you'd be like, yeah, let's talk about that. Let's unpack that a little bit more. Why? Because there probably are some things that I could grow in, and I feel like it's taking the emotion and the shame out of the self-conversation and saying, okay, what's factual, what's just shame?
I love that you brought up shame, because I think shame is what holds people back from confronting a realistic view of things. And when you can see yourself realistically without shame, then you're so much more capable of addressing what needs to be done in a healthy way, right? Yeah, removing the shame, I think that's huge.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because there's no shame in not knowing everything. Because like you said, nobody's an expert in everything. And if you haven't had certain experiences or haven't built certain skills, there's literally no shame in that. The only shame is what we bring. Sometimes we used to teach consultants, be the person who asks the stupid question.
Yeah.
Because everybody else wants to know and they're afraid to ask. So be that person.
Right.
Can you share with us a professional development goal that you have? Something you're working on?
Okay, well, right now I am finishing a master's degree. That's been 3 years, and really what happened is because I can no longer grow from where I'm at now from a title perspective. It's required that you have this academic education. And so I went back to school. That's one thing, and I think another thing that I'm working on from a development perspective is deepening my knowledge in technology. And so I think the new role that I'm in is really suited for that. I don't necessarily need to be an expert of those things.
Right, no.
But having an awareness of knowledge areas that exist, and then if I know that those knowledge areas exist as I grow as a leader, then I can pull in people who are the experts. I don't have to be the expert, but just know that those risks are there. It's really risk management as you continue to grow.
Yeah, and since you didn't have as much hands-on experience in those technical areas, getting this exposure now gives you that background going forward.
That's right.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. So Jessica, our last question. I know you know what our mission is here at She Makes It Work.
Yes.
And I know you know how passionate I am about that. So my question for you is, what are you hoping that we can do for women through She Makes It Work?
I think one of the biggest things that I've taken away from working with you is all of the practical, tangible ways that I can take something small that makes such a big impact in my career, not only from how I operate in my job or interact with others, or how I present myself with others, but also just ways that I can be better and grow in who I want to become over time. I hope that your listeners will take this practical advice and apply it, because it works, it's real, it's proven. I have found it incredibly helpful.
Oh my gosh, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for saying that. I really want to be able to help people at scale, because I've loved being able to build these relationships and support individual people's growth.
Yes.
And how can we do that for more people? So
Right.
Thank you for saying that, because that's the mission.
Yeah, because a lot of times there's this conception that I have to go through this $5,000 executive coaching where I'm sent away, and those are good. That's
Sent
part
away, like a dog going to training camp.
like girls' school or something, boarding school for
Going to boarding school
executive
for
leadership or something.
I love that.
I don't know, some Harvard Business Review certification or something like that. I think that there are really tangible, practical things that you have and that you share that are tangible, that you may have to take some time and process and practice, but I think is also good to have dialogue. And so my recommendation is find 3 or 4 friendships that maybe they're not coworkers, but people that you know are professionals. Share it with them and say, hey, what do you think about this video? What are your thoughts about what was said? And maybe use it as an opportunity to have dialogue with that circle of influencers that we have in our life. I think that that's a really good practical way of using the material that you have.
Part of our mission here is to provide that for people who may not normally have access to that, whose companies aren't tapping them on the shoulder and saying, you're the successor and we're going to pay for you to go to this training, right? Because I want everybody to have access to this information. Right now, there's some gatekeeping. And so thank you again. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. It's been such an honor to share so much that I've learned, but also humbled to even listen to my story. So it's been a pleasure.
Thank you again. And everyone, I hope you enjoyed this very, very first episode of our Inspiring Women series, where we are connecting with women across various industries and professions. Women who are leaders at home, women who are leaders at work, and just really getting to know them and their stories and seeing how everybody's creating their own journeys and their own paths in a different way. Thank you so much, and I will see you in the next one. Bye all.